Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I am thrilled and grateful to have my friend Connie Kadansky here with us today. Connie Kadansky is the president of Exceptional Sales Performance, which is an international sales coaching practice. She is a master certified coach and a recognized expert in identifying and eliminating sales call reluctance. In fact, she's been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, by Bloomberg Business, Investors Business Daily, Forbes and Inc magazine. And we're very, very lucky to have her here today because sales call reluctance is the emotional hesitation to prospect and self-promote that many, many people experience. And in fact, she also sells the only assessment in the entire world that measures the 16 types of sales call reluctance. And what she does, in her words, is she helps salespeople get their ask in gear. Welcome, Connie.
Thanks, Vered.
It is such a joy to have you here because, as you know, this is a podcast about mindset, about how to master our inner world in order to show up at our best and get our best results. So would you be willing to share a little bit about how you got into this world of sales call reluctance coaching?
Well, I had sales call reluctance myself. So I was a salesperson and I was taking a nap at 2:00 in the afternoon and I was motivated and goal oriented. And I got on the internet and I found the book, The Psychology of Sales Call Reluctance, written by George Dudley and Shannon Goodson. And I ordered the book. And I'm sitting in my living room and I'm reading it and I go, oh, I've got call reluctance. And I flew to Dallas and I went through a 3-day program on fear-free prospecting. And then I coached with one of the researchers and behavioral scientists for 10 weeks. And at the end of the 10 weeks, she goes, Connie, you really get this. And so she invited me to become a licensee of theirs. So I've been a licensee of theirs for 24 years. So I'm standing on the platform of a lot of credibility.
And you have a lot of credibility yourself. I have been your colleague for many years now, and I've seen and heard the impact that you've had on many, many people. So would you be willing to share a little bit more now about what sales call reluctance actually is, where it comes from, and of course, at some point in this conversation, what we can do about it?
Yes. So sales call reluctance is the emotional hesitation to prospect and self-promote. So when you look at a basic sales model, there are 5 steps. So salespeople identify who they want to reach out to, their prospects. So that's step 1. Then they must initiate contact. How are they going to get into a conversation? So initiating contact. Then they introduce themselves. Step 4 is to land that all coveted sales appointment, sales conversation. And 5 is to influence the prospect to buy from them. So step 2 and 3 is initiate contact and introduce themselves. 80% of those 2 steps is emotional in origin. And salespeople are lots of times, they're not comfortable initiating contact. So only 20% is technical on the how-to. And so that's call reluctance, where they're emotionally hesitating. So something inside of them is, this could be such a good prospect. They could really use my product or service. However, I'm hesitating to initiate contact with them. So that's call reluctance.
Thank you. And you shared that so clearly. And I'm curious, what are forms of that hesitation? What do you typically hear as some of those thoughts or emotions?
Well, we call them negative intruders, where people will think about prospecting someone. So I was talking to a prospect this morning. He's a financial advisor, and he has 3 children in school, and he takes them to school every day. And he knows the teachers, and he really wants to start the conversation with the teachers to find out if there would be any value to them. And then there's something inside of him that is saying, oh, what are they going to think of me if I start prospecting them? And so he hasn't. And people think, oh, they're already working with somebody else and they already love their current vendor. And so there are just so many ways that people talk themselves out of initiating contact.
So let's get right to it. What does someone do if they experience that hesitation? They want the prospect, they know they can add value, but there's something holding them back. What do they do?
Okay, so number one, they need to become aware of it. And so they're pretty aware of it, right? And then they need to admit that that's what they're experiencing. And sometimes it's hard because salespeople have a tendency to hide, deny, and suppress it and hide it under the rug, so to speak. And so because of your mindset shift and the mindset work you do, and it all really comes down to mindset. And so what I do is I share with them what I call the 2 deeper mindsets. And so when somebody's experiencing call reluctance, their mindset is self-centric. And so they're thinking things like, it's all about me. And so they're focused on themselves when they're initiating contact. So they'll say, how do I get what I want? How do I protect myself? What will they think of me? How do I make sure I look good? And it's I, me, my, self-centric, right? And they're less than their best because they're focused on themselves. And so what I really coach and train and work with them on is to have what I call a value-genic mindset, meaning how do I create value for somebody else? How do I create value for that prospect? And when they can adopt that mindset throughout their entire body, it's not just a head game. People cannot talk themselves out of call reluctance. They can't think themselves out of call reluctance. It's a mind-body experience. And so really to start looking at how do they create the value for the prospect. So the number one thing is when they're ready to pick up the phone, if they're using the telephone to initiate contact and the phone works, not all the time. We hear a lot of things, people, nobody answers their phone anymore, etc. However, there are other ways to initiate contact, is that they actually say to themselves, it's not about me. And they remind themselves, it's not about me. And so one of the ways that I really work with them on is to recognize how they're a piece of the success puzzle for that prospect, whether they are B2C or B2B. When they can really own the value of how important their product or service is, then they can turn the corner. And sometimes it's hard for people to do that, a lot of times, because they get it intellectually. However, do they adopt it emotionally and mentally? Does that make sense?
Oh my goodness, it so does. And I love that kind of statement to say to ourselves right at that moment, to embody that value-genic mindset, if I got the words correctly there.
Yes.
It's not about me, because I think once we say that, there is a shift from here and ego and all that fear into just love. And I love the way that you framed it around being a piece of their success puzzle. because they need us in order to get to where they want to go. And when we truly feel that, I imagine we radiate that and they feel it too. So you talked about the first step being kind of the acknowledgement, of it, and then to be able to admit it. So is it admitting to ourselves that this is how we think and feel, or are you suggesting to say to the prospect, I'm a little nervous here or something like that? What does that mean?
Oh, I mean to admit it to themselves, admit it. What I am experiencing call reluctance. And when people take the assessment that measures call reluctance, so it's a coaching and development tool, and they may show up as an over preparer. So they're overthinking the whole thing, and they already have 50 scripts. They've interviewed successful people in their business. They have ideas, and they still haven't found the perfect script, the perfect way. And so to be able to just say, I admit I experience over preparation. And once they can admit it and really look at it and see how it is just stealing their spontaneity and how they're overthinking it, then they can get on the other side of it if they can admit it.
Oh,
so that's an example of one.
It's so wise what you're sharing, because we cannot change something until we become conscious of it and until we accept it. And because we're imperfect beings, and that's okay, right? But I agree, we cannot shift something until we fully accept that this is the truth of what is for us right now, and we're getting better and better. That's right. So we're at the step now that they're picking up the phone, or they're about to connect with their prospect in some way, and they shift the lens from themselves to value and benefit for the other person. What then? What if during the call they're getting the jitters again, or those old thoughts are coming up? What should they do?
Well, it's always good to prepare and to get into a place where that they're grounded. And so many people, Barry, when they're prospecting, that they're not positioned, they're physically not positioned right. And so they're slumped in their chair, their feet are on the floor, they're not grounded. And so I always encourage them to get grounded for a good, at least 2 minutes, and to close their eyes. Because when people close their eyes, they go beyond the analytical mind. And then to do breathing, or there are so many different ways for them to get into that place. And then also to imagine how they want it to go, and imagine how they want to be. And think about somebody that their client that absolutely adores them. I sometimes have them put a picture of their family right there. So a fun picture there. So they're just in a different place. So then when they're on the phone, so scripting is important, and it's important for people to get one. And I don't care if they have been in sales 45 years, the people who are really good at prospecting, they still have some kind of a script. And I'm working with a software, well, she sells data integration, and she was just having a lot of trouble getting people to open up to talk to her. And so we kind of worked with it. It's like, you know what? We may or may not be a solution for you. And when she brought that into her script, people started opening up. They got curious because she's giving them some space. So she was so comfortable in that, and it really worked for her, and found that people were more open, opposed to the script that she was using, like, we're the best thing that's from sliced bread, and XYZ works with us, and a lot of scripting that just is so boring. And as you know, Vered, it's the delivery of the script that is 73% of its success. So the words are important, however, the script is too. And then you said, what if people get the jitters inside the call? Is I work with my clients on creating pattern interrupts. So when salespeople are making calls, often they'll get, oh, we already have somebody that does that. We already have a lawyer. We already da da da. And all it is it's just a pattern that they have used for salespeople. And so we really work on getting some of those really common responses they get, and then creating a pattern interrupt. And so if somebody goes, oh, we already work with that, to be able to have a question that takes that prospect to a different place in their brain. And so there is some preparatory work there. And when salespeople, because there's usually only 2 or 3 or 4 different patterns, then they're prepared for it. And also they're grounded, they're spontaneous, so they're friendlier, it's flowing. And those are the kind of salespeople that engage people in conversations.
Wow, I love that you are bringing the whole body into this and actually reminding people that the things that we can do in advance of the conversation, like ground our body, close our eyes, imagine ourselves feeling good, right? And using anchors like images from, of loved ones or a happy moment to get us into that state so that we can feel at our best. And would you be willing to share what are some of the, let's say, 3 top patterns that you refer to, like objections, right? I'm imagining maybe something about I don't have the money for this or the time for this, or perhaps some other. What are the most common objections that salespeople get? And what are some of those things that they can say to interrupt, or, whether it's a form of a question or an insight or something to get even better results?
So yes, thank you for that. And it's always to ask a question to interrupt the pattern, because as salespeople have a tendency to just tell them, like if they say, oh, we already have somebody that works with us. And then the salesperson that makes a statement, it just goes over the top of the head of the prospect. They don't even hear it. However, when you ask a question, you force the person's brain to engage with you. And so, oh, we already have somebody that does that. I understand. So you acknowledge what they said. So I understand, or I see, or, oh, okay. And then a question would be around, oh, so if your current vendor could do one thing better for you, what would it be?
Wow.
So that's one. Or just how's that relationship working for you, right? So I don't like that as well as I like the first one, because it does force them to engage. And then also knowing that timing is everything. So when we are initiating contact, that they might have just got bad news from the school that their child is misbehaving. So we have to know that timing is everything. And so if they go, oh, I'm just not interested. I'm not interested. And so to be able to say, let me think, Baron, that's a good question. If they say, oh, I'm not interested, and to be able to ask them a very specific question around the product or service that is kind of like an outlier question that gets them thinking. So I would have to, it just depends on the product or service, as far as they go, I'm not interested, to be able to think like that, right?
Yeah, and I think that this idea, thank you so much for sharing these, because I think that the idea of asking a question to just get them to engage, they might not be ready to do business with us or even to hear our product or service, but it shows that we're curious. And, perhaps even if they want to stay with their current vendor, we can still give them some kind of a value added idea. And who knows, maybe in the future, if things don't work out with their current vendor, I suppose that, they would have us in mind because we added value, because we cared. And so what happens if we don't believe in the product or service that we're selling? Let's say we work at a company and we're like, I don't know. I mean, it seems like a good idea, but maybe they don't personally use it. What then?
Well, that's that's sad for the salesperson. So, because if they don't believe it, I mean, I can't imagine trying to prospect and sell something that I don't believe in. And that's why in the insurance world, I work with salespeople in the insurance world, that the people that are most effective are the people that own insurance and own life insurance or own a long-term care policy or something like that. And because that is really sad for people. However, let's go to somebody who is just a regular person that sells data integration and software, and she doesn't really understand it. Well, she's learning about it and she's interviewing people, and it's part of her responsibility to understand what she sells and what is the problem that she solves. And so there's homework involved for a salesperson to convince themselves that they are solving somebody's problem. Because when you look at it, a qualified prospect has 5 characteristics. Number 1, they have a problem you can solve. And sometimes they don't know they have a problem. And so that's where you get curious and ask questions. Number 2, that, and the best kind, if there's a sense of urgency, and also whether they have the money and the budget, and whether they're the decision maker or they can influence the decision maker. And then the last one is so important, that they can develop trust with that person. And so that's why sales is complex and complicated, where the salesperson has a responsibility. You have to really pull it together. And that's why I do role play with my clients, so that they can actually feel what it feels like, and the role play, and we record it so that they can listen to where they get a little wobbly. And big companies do that too. I mean, they put their salespeople in simulators, and that's how sophisticated it can get.
Wow. Well, first of all, it's really interesting to hear. I've never heard that before, in terms of some of the characteristics of a qualified prospect. And, I think what you said earlier around this dilemma of what if we don't yet have enough experience or personal experience with what it is that we're selling. So maybe on a conscious level, we imagine it has value because clearly it's being sold, but we may not have personal experience with it, to take the time and have those interviews with people that are using it, or, really research those case studies or whatever that might be, so that they can involve their emotions. So it's not just at a head level where they believe it's a good thing, but they truly in their heart believe that they are adding value. And I think that's at the essence of the valuegenic mindset that you refer to, where they truly whole body, whole soul believe that what they are selling is useful. And I believe once they get to that, then energetically they get to really express how that could be helpful for the other person. And perhaps at an unconscious level, the other individual picks up on that and feels that trust, and
Yes.
are open to the words, and to the evidence.
And Vera, there are companies that hire salespeople that just expect that salesperson to don't even talk to me, just put the orders in. I'm just going to look for the orders. And that is so unfair, because some companies don't know how to sell their product. And so they expect the salesperson to figure it out. And then there are some companies that do a really good job in orienting their people and doing that and getting them geared up for success. And there's so much content on the internet that people can get educated. And it's like I say, they just need to put in the time and educate themselves around that.
Yeah. And how important is it as they're going through this process of building more confidence in, making those sales calls? How important is it to track their success or to have some kind of a measure of their progress?
Well, you can't manage what you don't measure, and whatever you measure improves. And what happens with most salespeople is they overwhelm themselves with a goal that is unachievable. So if they've never made 25 calls in a day and they set a goal to make 25 calls in a day, they've totally sabotaged their success. So it's easing into it. And then also is celebrating those little tiny bitty successes. So I worked with an organization that it was a recruiting organization, and their recruiting is sales on steroids. And the trainer had where it was just keep somebody talking for 3 minutes. That's all you need to do. Just keep them talking for 3 minutes. And so it's just those kind of challenges, because when we're challenged, we change. And so there are a lot of ways that we can do that. And then, but a lot of salespeople are hyper achievers where they have overused the achievement. And so they will overextend themselves, and they will not celebrate unless they hit a home run. And so I always use baseball analogies like, what is it that got you to first base? And and another thing, Barrett, is that salespeople have to really be fascinated by human behavior. And just recently, I learned that fascination is an emotion, just like curiosity. Curiosity is not an intellect, it's an emotion. And you think about children, right? They're curious. And fascination is when salespeople become fascinated by human behavior. And that's another way when they, salespeople that are out there, they're people that are not nice to them. They can be rude, they can be disrespectful. And is that salesperson going to have the mindset of, oh my gosh, I did something wrong. Oh, they're going to be mad at me. I'm all this. Or the mindset of, that is really fascinating. I caught that person at a real unfortunate time. I'm curious what may have been happening in their day, right? And so they took that negative of somebody and they turned it into a fascination that causes them to explore. And then they become good at just assessing people and the dynamics of human behavior. And so that's where people can reset themselves from a setback, because any salesperson that's making calls, I can guarantee you there's going to happen. Like I made a call not too long ago, and I was in mid-sentence and the guy hung up on me. And I thought, and so I called him back and he didn't answer. But the way and it's kind of rude. So I just thought, I wonder what's going on in his day. I just wonder. And so it helped me just get over it in a way, instead of getting caught up in getting angry and thinking that and calling him a lot of bad names, right? because that happens. And so we can have a particular level of awareness that can serve us, or it can throw us into the rabbit hole.
Oh my goodness. This is so beautiful that you're sharing this, because, that curiosity, this kind of almost like explorer mindset, as you said, just being fascinated with human behavior is really an invitation to bring in more compassion. Because if I'm in judgment mode, right, all I see is what's wrong with this person, what's wrong with me, and all that stuff. And when I can just be curious, I'm kind of suspending all of that and saying, right, what might be going on for this person? And we said earlier that one of the objections, like you said, the example of the person who just got some bad news from the school about their kid, and they just not interested right now. I wonder if perhaps in a moment like that is just to say, I sense that there's a lot going on in your world at this moment. And, I wonder, what, if anything, I can do to help, or perhaps, we can connect another time or something like that. But just acknowledging what we're picking up for the other person, I imagine will help that person not feel like, they're being chased, or, but just that they're being seen.
Yes, yes. And to be able to have that level of awareness. Yes. And so with my prospecting script, I introduce myself and I'm saying, I'm hoping for 13 seconds to explain my call. And I learned this from a cybersecurity sales guy. And he said 10 seconds and I changed it to 13. And you know what, Barrett? I have never had somebody not let me explain my call. They'll go, some of them are smart Alex, and they'll go, okay, you got 13 seconds, or, and you just kind of have to be fun. And so there are different ways to open it up that is unusual from the other calls that they're getting. And then in your scripting, I'll give this free scripting here, is just to be able to ask people, I'm curious, how much focus and attention do you put on, and whatever your product or service solution is, and I mentioned cybersecurity. I'm just curious, how much focus and attention do you put on making sure your computers are secure? And that helps set the stage. And then that's when they start having a conversation with you. And talking about body is having an open body when you're having conversations too. That's why I'm a big believer in headsets when you're prospecting, so that you can have a free range and you can open your body language up, and then people can feel it.
Oh my goodness. Well, I certainly feel it with you today, because you are just on fire. And what I mean by that is everything that's come out of your mouth, your heart today has been something that is so practical, so useful, and so valuable. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And Connie, I know that everybody listening is just curious to learn even more, especially people that are in the world of selling. Of course, we're all selling all day, every day, something. And for those people that really want to up their game and do even better, and most importantly, feel better as they're doing this work, how can they learn more about you and more about how they can overcome whatever reluctance they may have?
Exceptionalsales.com is the website, and there is a opt-in. It says free tips, and it is an exceptionally good 5-page report, and it includes a paper and pencil prospecting EKG. So you can just kind of zip through and assess yourself. And then out of that also is LinkedIn. So I have a lot of information on LinkedIn. I have some videos there, and I have a YouTube channel. And there is a lot of information. So Connie Kadansky on LinkedIn and Connie Kadansky for YouTube. I think, Connie Kadansky, the Sales Call Reluctance Coach. And there you can learn there. And then also, if you will personally email me and say, I listened to your podcast from Vered, then I will send them a very valuable handout that explains the self-centric and the value-centric mindset a little bit deeper. And I'm happy to send that. So Connie at exceptionalsales.com. And if today's not the day for call reluctance, you can sure pick up the phone and give me a call at 602-380-5431.
Well, I am really, with my whole heart, so very grateful for you, Connie. I know you're a busy lady. You do many things. You have many programs. And of course, you're a busy master certified coach. And I'm grateful that you took some time out of your day to share these helpful tips. And I wish you continued success in all that you do.
Well, and Vered, I thank you too for having this podcast on mindset and all the work that you do in your world, because I believe everybody needs a coach. And I know that you are very strategically positioned. And so thank you for the work that you're doing to add value out there.